admittedly, we haven't seen a whole lot preseason-wise schematically. But when you kind of project some of the things and some of the clues you've been able to look at, who are some guys that you think are poised to have pretty big seasons, maybe that are taking that next step?
Good question. Tough to give you guys who have been heavy in the preseason because I think you would agree with me that, like, for the most part, those guys aren't going to have big roles,
Yep.
largely because this team is so far beyond where they've been for decades, which is like, hey, we're trying to figure out who the starters are in the preseason. Now, we have a pretty good feel for who all the starters are. Like, most of these positions are locked in place, and from that comes less fun in the preseason, kind of navigating who's going to make the roster, who's going to make a big deal. If I had to come up with names of guys that I thought will now have maybe a role, we would have started with Mike Hall, right? That's a player that I just think is, I mean, perhaps watching the second preseason game, he's the most dynamic defensive tackle they have of the group, period. He's come in stronger than I anticipated, doing better against double teams. And then, like, to me, he's a speed, strength, pass rush. I mean, he is really special. And then it was more like, can he be a three down defensive tackle who's on the field in the run scenarios, who can handle double teams without getting driven out of the hole, or having a linebacker come get blocked quickly. He has proven he can do those things early on. Have to see what the NFL's situation is here, let it all play out in the court and all that stuff. But he's one that has stood out and could be and should be, if this situation goes whatever direction it goes and he's able to play, he should be out there a lot for this team. Isaiah McGuire has been a really nice preseason player, kind of locked up that fifth edge spot. I think they're going to keep 5 defensive ends, and he's the guy that's going to be there. And it's a second year of a draft pick, should be getting better. Really optimistic about what I've seen from him. And, like, if he has to play on Sundays, I do think there's a playable player there to be a nice rotational piece. And that probably becomes a little more of an important thing when Obani Okoronkwo's contract's up. They got to make some decisions on, like, Zadarius Smith in another couple of years. That's where it becomes a bit more pressing, but I've been really encouraged with what I've seen there. Mahmoud Diabate has been a really nice piece. I mean, I really liked him. He caught my eye in the Hall of Fame game last year as a UDFA, and I'm like, he's got something. He's lanky, long, can run, looks different than a lot of linebackers who come into the league, and he's proven through kind of getting a better grasp of the mental side of things and kind of being more of an off-ball backer. When he was at Utah and Florida in college, he was more of an edge rusher in those odd front schemes. He's moved into this off linebacker role, off ball, more of a will, and has just developed his game really nicely. Starts to understand schemes and stuff. And I know he's working his way up the depth chart. I'm not sure he's going to start because of Jordan Hicks, and certainly not because of JOK, but there's a chance he gets some meaningful snaps this year. And then on the offensive side, two guys that I think on the younger side that have taken some nice steps. Zaire Mitchell-Paden, kind of always been a practice squad guy, hovered around. He has done some things, I think, in the body structure style, and, like, being able to be a third tight end is in the realm of possibility for him. Blocking better, certainly getting into space and being able to run after catch a little bit. He's not a great athlete by any stretch, but he's good enough to be a third tight end with a big body, big frame. And if the Browns keep 3, which we expect they will, even though they're one of the teams that I think push away from heavier personnel more than anyone, which is kind of ironic because Kevin came in with like 5 tight ends at times in 2020 and 21. But he's one. Jordan Akins looks more comfortable as a second tight end, getting a lot of pass catching opportunities in camp and in preseason games. And then I think Jamari Thrash looks really comfortable too. I mean, as a rookie playing outside, smaller frame, but as a guy that, like, you could work in, maybe potentially keep him and doing that inside out roll stuff that I think is going to be more outside for Elijah Moore, but a similar player that could take over for that contract situation with Elijah Moore is gone after this year. I've been impressed with Jamari Thrash. So those are some of the guys. I can't say I'm expecting big years from anyone, maybe outside of Hall, if Hall is able to play a full season, but the Browns are pretty comfortable there, right? And based on what we learned in the preseason, we just want to see guys who fill out the end of the roster and could potentially have some sort of future here. And I think that's kind of what we're laying out is these guys might not be huge this year, but they could step into those roles in the coming years.